everyone, welcome to our channel Knowledge of. Friends, subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon for the latest update. Today we're going to start with discussing about software engineering, and that is your class 3rd. We had completed your class 1 and 2, where we had completed your unit 1, which is your introductions here, and this is your unit 2. We'll start in today's class, which is unit 2, and that is software requirement, that is specification, which stands for SRS, and that is also an important one. But before starting with this, it's a huge request from my side to all the viewers, please go through with the subscribe button and please like, share and subscribe our channel so that many and maximum people can get the information at once, and even though you can also enjoy the video as well. In this, we'll start with discussing about the introductions of software engineering here, that what do you mean by a functional and a non-functional requirements, and give any 4 functional requirements and a 4 non-functional requirements for the computer-based library information system as well. This has been asked of 5 marks here. So first we'll discuss about the functional requirements, and then we'll discuss about the non-functional requirements, and after that we'll discuss about the functional requirements for the library information system, and of course the non-functional requirements for the library information system. So first we'll go ahead, and that is functional requirements. What is functional requirement? Because this has been asked for 5 marks here. So in this, the functional requirements, if I am talking about here, in this functional requirement, the functional requirements are all of the requirements that describe the required functionality or a system services as well. In terms of functional requirements for a library information system, so the functional requirements for the library information system that we have to talk about it here, the librarian must be able to add or delete books entries in the database. Any authenticated here, that is for that any authenticated user, which is a staff, student or librarian, must be able to search for this desired book, and a new user must get registered before using this information system. She must be authenticated by using login and password as well. So with the same references, if I'm talking about the functional experiment for requirements for library information system, as I told you about it, which is the librarian must be add or delete the books entries in the database as well, and any authenticated user like staff, student, libraries, that must be able to search for this desired book, and a new user must be registered before using the information system. He or she must be authenticated by using a login and password, and the librarian must have permission to update and access that account of each user as well. This comes under the functional requirements of library information system. Now we'll discuss about more in the detailed about it, which is the another one is your non-functional. First we'll discuss non-functional requirements, and that is, in the terms of it, we'll discuss the non-functional requirement for the library information system as well. So here we go ahead. Non-functional requirements for library information system. So in this, that the story here for the non-functional that we have requirements here. In this, that the non-functional requirements that find system properties and constants as well. Various properties of the system that can be reliability, response time, storage requirement, and constants of the system that can be input and output device capability, system representation, etc. In terms of non-functional requirements for the library information system, where the storage space for the library database must be sufficiently large so that any number of book information entries that can be added, and if any failure in operating system or in information system occurs, then there should be a provision for taking the backups, as well as the user interface to the system that should be friendly so that the novice that user that can use the system effectively. In the same case, that the information should provide the access rights to in appropriate manner, and for instance, various types of user might be using this library information system, such as your teacher, the student, and of course that is the system administrator, and he can be the librarian as well. Then only the system administrator should be able to add, modify, or delete the data, and the teachers or the student must be able to search or read the data as well. Now we'll go ahead with an entity that is related a relationship diagram. The question has been arise: describe the three types of non-functional requirements which may be placed on the system, and give example of each of the types of the requirement as well. That what we have to talk about it. The first will go ahead with the non-functional requirements here. So there are the three non-functional requirement which can be placed on a system that we have. The types of non-functional requirements. Let's go ahead. Types of non-functional requirements. So the types of non-functional requirement, that what we have to go ahead. In this we will make a tree structure diagram. Here you can go ahead and you will get to know about it, and that is in the form that what we have to go ahead, which is the first non-functional that is requirement has been divided into three parts. First we'll go ahead. First we'll make a structure and then we'll implement that. Okay. Then after that, it is also being divided, and that is, this is first divided into three parts. That is also divided into another part as well. This has been divided into three parts. The structure is somewhat that is in a typical way, or you can say that they are somewhat complex. Other than that, if I'm talking about this one, this is also being divided into three. This is also further divided into one. So this is what it comes as in the form, and this is also being divided into two. I will just let you know what it is all about. This is your types of non-functional requirements. So here in this, if I'm going ahead with a detailed about it, which is that is, this is your non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirement has been divided into three. One, which is the first we have as your product requirement. The second is your organizational requirement. And the third we have is your external requirement. In the same case, where in the case of product requirement, the product requirement has been divided into here, which is your usability requirement, where in this, when product requirement has been divided into three, which we have is your efficiency requirement, second is your, that is the reliability requirement, and the third we have, that is portability requirement. And where the efficiency requirement has been divided into two, which is the performance requirement, and the second we have is your size requirement. Okay, so this is all we had completed about the product requirement. Now we'll go ahead with the organization requirement. In this has been divided into three, as you can see. The first is your delivery requirement, the second is your implementation requirement, and the third we have standard requirement. In terms of this, that is your external representation, that is requirement here. This has been first divided into the interoperability, the second we have is your ethical requirement, and the third we have is your legislative requirement. Legislative requirement further divided into safety requirement. So as you can see here, this is all done here as well, as you can see. So as I just let you go ahead with non-functional requirement, this has been divided into three, which is your product requirement, organizational requirement, and external requirement as well. In product requirement, this has been divided into four, you can say that. The first we have is efficiency requirement, reliability requirement, and portability requirement, and the fourth is your usability requirement. In efficiency, this has been divided into two, which is your performance requirement and the size requirement. Talking about the organizational requirement, this has been divided into three, which is delivery requirement, implementation requirement, and standard requirement. In the same case, I will talk about the external requirement. This has been divided into three. The first we have here is your, that is interoperability requirement, and that ethical requirement, and legislative requirement. And legislative requirement is also being divided into one, which is your safety requirement here. Okay, this is all what we can say, that it is the types of non-functional requirement. In terms of product requirement, if I'm talking about here, these requirement specifies how a delivered product should behave in a particular way, for instance, execution and speed and reliability. For the same case, we'll talk about for the organizational requirement here, that the requirements which are consequences of organizational policies and procedures that comes under this category, for instance, process standards based implementation requirement as well. We'll talk about in this here, which is comes under in it, and that is comes under the external requirement. In these requirements arise due to the factor that are external to the system and its development process, for instance, interoperability requirement, legislative requirements as well, that what we have to go ahead here. Now we will be going ahead with the further one, and that what we have to discuss as well, and which is another question, and that is on the basis of the requirements engineering process here. In terms of it, if I'm talking about, the question has been asked is discuss the significance and use of the requirements engineering. What are problems in formation, that formulations of requirement, that has been asked for 5 marks. The other question is, software requirement analysis is an unquestionably and the most communication the intensive step in the software engineering process, and why does the communication path frequently break down as well. Where in the same case we can see that has been asked for 5 marks. We'll go ahead with other question, that is the state any two problems that may arise during the requirement analysis as well. So that we have to go ahead. We'll deal with it, the significance and use of requirements engineering here. Significance and use of requirement engineering. Significance and use of requirement engineering in this, where we have to talk about it, and that has been asked of 2 marks as well, and that is of 5 marks each in a different examination. That is, requirement engineering is useful in establishing the services that the customer requires from a system. It represents the constants under which systems operates and is developed. The requirement engineering process helps in analysis of the system. After the requirement analysis, the designer can design for the data, the specification, and design the software that can be developed as well. Where in the same case, if I am going ahead here, that is what we have to deal with it, and that what we have to go ahead. There are the 2 types of problems that are associated with the requirement. Due to these problems, the communication problem frequently breaks down, and these problems are, so we'll talk about it, and that is, we have the first requirement we have is your which is your the requirement imprecision. Requirement imprecision. In this in requirement imprecision, if I'm talking about here in the detailed about it, which we have to talk about it. So here in this that is, the problems arise when the requirements are not precisely stated, and where ambiguous requirements may be interpreted in a different way to developers and users as well, and consider that meaning of the term appropriate behavior as well. In the same case, the second we'll talk about it, which is the user intention. In terms of user intention here, that the special purpose viewer for each different document type. The third we have is your developer interpretation. In terms of developer interpretation here, that here it is provide that a text viewer that shows the contents of the document. The fourth we have is your requirements completeness and consistency. So that we'll write it down here. Requirement completeness and consistency. So in this here, that is, the requirements should be both complete and are consistent. Complete means they should include descriptions of all facilities required, and consistent means there should be no conflicts or contradictions in the descriptions of the system facilities as well. Now we will be going ahead with other one, that what we have to talk about it, which is another question, and that is in the terms of elicitations and analysis. The question has been arise here, which is, what are the various requirement elicitations technique explained? This has been asked of 5 marks here. So let's go ahead. Various requirements elicitation technique. So here various requirements elicitation technique that we have to talk about it, and even though that we have to discuss here, where the requirements elicitations means requirements discovery, and that is the various requirement elicitation technique we talk about it. So the requirement elicitation means the requirement discovery, and the various requirement elicitation technique are, and that we'll discuss. There are many, which is the first we have is interviewing, second is scenario, third is viewpoint, fourth is use case, and the fifth is your ethnography. That we'll discuss here in the detailed here. The first we'll talk about it, which we have here, that is as follows. That is the first we have is your interviewing, and that will deal with it here. The first is interviewing. In interviewing, in this technique, the requirements engineering that the requirements engineering term communicate the stakeholder by asking various questions about the system and its uses, and from the answer the requirement that can be identified as well. We'll talk about the second one, which we have is your scenario. In terms of scenario, the scenario is the sequence of interactions made by a user with a software system. Requirements engineers that can be the information gained from this scenario to formulate an actual system here, that is an actual system requirements. The third we'll talk about it, which is the viewpoint. In terms of viewpoint here, that is a viewpoint provides a perspective to the system, and using these perspective the requirements can be discovered. We'll talk about the fourth one, which we have is that is the use case. In use case here, the use cases are the fundamental units in which the functionalities are distinctly presented, and use cases helps to identify the individual interaction with the system by designing the proper use case for a different scenario and a major requirements of the system that can be identified as well. We'll talk about the fifth one, which we have is your ethnography. In ethnography here, that is your ethnography is a technique of observation which is used to understand social and organizational requirement, and the system analyst imagines himself as a part of the working environment in which the system will be used, and he then observes the day-to-day activities and notes down the needs and tasks required by the organization, and the analyst thus finds the implicit requirement of the system as well. This is all that what we have to discuss here, which is the various requirement elicitation technique. The first is interviewing, scenario, viewpoint, use case, and ethnography as well. Now we'll go ahead further, and that what we have to discuss the another question here, that is what problems and challenges are faced while eliciting the requirements here. This has been asked for 5 marks. The other we have is describe with the suitable examples the different types of requirements problem that should be identified and resolved during the requirement analysis activities. So we'll discuss the challenges that are faced by while eliciting requirements here. So challenges. In terms of challenges, if I'm talking about here, where the first challenges we'll talk about it, this has been asked of that is 3 times in the examination paper of 5 marks only. So that the challenges we'll face it, that the first challenge is the customer sometimes is unable to specify the scope of the project, and sometimes the customer specify too many technical details, and this may increase the confusion. Where the second is there is difficulty in understanding the problem. Sometimes customer could not decide what are their needs and wants. Sometimes they have got poor understanding of capabilities and limitations of existing computing environment. Sometimes customer find it difficult to communicate with the system engineer about their needs. Sometimes customer may have not got some conflicting requirement, and this ultimately results in specifying the ambiguous requirement here. The other and the last that we have here, which is as a project progresses, the needs or requirements of the customer changes. This creates a problems of volatility as well. So now we will be going ahead with other question that what we have to talk about it, which is what are the main activities carried out during the requirement analysis and specification. So that is activities we have to discuss here, which is carried out the analysis and specification, which has been asked for 5 marks. So we'll discuss the process activities. The process activities are as follows. In terms of activities, the first activity is your requirement discovery. In terms of requirement discovery, if I'm going ahead here in this, by having an effective communication with the customers, the requirements that can be identified here, and the second is your requirements classification and discovery. Requirement classification and discovery. In requirement classification and discovery here, all the unstructured requirement that can be categorized systematically depending upon their nature, and any of their they are arranged in a groups as well. We'll talk about the third one, which is that we have as the requirement prioritization. In requirement prioritization here, within this is that there are some conflicting requirements, and hence the requirements are prioritized first. And if there are some unrealistic requirement, then negotiations are made and only realistic prioritized requirements are collected. If any conflicts occur, then it is resolved in the requirements engineers as well. We'll talk about the other one, which is the fourth one, and that is the requirement documentation. In requirement documentation, that this is the specification of all the requirements, and that an important requirement document is created here. Now we'll go ahead further, and that we'll discuss another question, and that the question we have here, which is why requirements are hard to elicit, and explain requirements elicitation technique that use the diagram to using the banker systems as well. That banking system, we talk about it, that we had done these the activities that will be the challenges. We have talked about the requirements as well, we had talked about it, because this has been asked of 10 marks, so you have to detailed explain these things, and after that we will be showing the diagram, the uses case for the ATM systems as well, and as well as for the banking system that we deal with it. That is also an important one here. Let's go ahead with the question as that we have to discuss here, which is of 10 marks. So with the same case of the banking uses cases for the ATM here, and that we have the first, we have it is your user, that is your operator. What it will give, that is a startup system, and that is shutdown system. So operator will do startup system or shutdown system. Now for the other case we have is for the customer. So this is your customer. This is your bank. This is the use cases for ATM system. So in this is a customer here which establish sessions, that is your include, it will process transaction which communicate with the bank, where that the user can, they do is your withdraw, deposit and inquiry. These three things that we can do through an ATM, that shows the process of banking system as well. Now we'll further move ahead with the other question that we have to discuss here, which is review and management of the user needs here, that we have to discuss as well. So let's go ahead with the further one as well, and which is that is the question we have: who should be involved in requirement review? Draw that is your the less model here, and that is the assess model showing how requirement review might be organized. This has been asked for 5 marks here. So we'll discuss the first that is your related to the software in the same cases for the process model for review. So process model for review here, that is software developers and the user of the system must be involved in that is your requirement review. The requirement review in the process in which the groups of people the first read and analysis requirement and identify the problem, discuss the problem, agree upon the actions to solve these problem as well. And the process model for the review process is to be given as that we will talk about it with a that is in, through a diagrammatically, and that we have. This is what we have as your process model for review. In this, the first we have here is your plan review. In the plan review, then that is your further excluded, and that what we have discussed here. The first we have is your plan review. In plan review, that after that it will goes towards to distribute SRS document. Then it will go and prepare for review. Then it will that arrange a review meeting. And then again it will go to execute the action. And then after that it will revise the SRS. Okay, so this is the process model for the review here. In a plan review, that the review team is selected and the date, time and venue for the review meeting is decided. For the distribute SRS document here, during the review process the SRS is distributed to all the team members here. Then for the prepare for review here, every reviewer reads the requirements and identifies that is your the confluent omissions, inconsistencies, deviations from standards, and a problem if any from the SRS as well. And arrange a review meeting here. In a review meeting, the identified problems are discussed and of corrective actions is prepared. And for the other one, that is to execute the action, all the actions for the correcting the problems on the SRS are executed, that the chairpersons must see to it and specified in actions for are followed here. For the revise we have, that is the revised SRS document here. In this, that the SRS here that is revised in order to reflect the agreed action, and of course after revision an acceptable review document is prepared or re-reviewed be conducted as well. It has been important question that we have to talk about it. Now we'll go ahead with further one, that what we have to talk about, the another question: why do traceability matrices become difficult to manage? There are many systems requirement explained with the suitable examples that we have to talk about it. The traceability matrices that we have to talk about. in traceability matrices here. In this, where when there this has been asked of this has been asked of 5 marks. In this, that when there are the small numbers of requirement, then the traceability matrices that can be managed easily. But if the system is large and that is wide, so basically there occur many requirements. So for these system, we need to do which requirements is dependent upon the other requirement as well, and that is thus all the related requirements needs to be traced for checking dependability. And keeping track of such huge database is a complex job that cannot be manageable by traceability matrix alone, and hence that we have a kind automation is required for sub system as well. Now I'll discuss about another question, and that what we have to go ahead. Briefly explain the review process of quality assurance. This has been asked of 5 marks, and that what we have discussed here as well. And the other question is that we had discussed here, as you can see here, and this is the answer for this. The other question is write a short note on requirement management. In terms of requirement management here, in this has been asked of the 5 marks only, and that's what we have to talk about it. In terms of this, that the requirement management is the process of managing that is your managing the changing requirements during the requirement engineering process and system development as well. The traceability is concerned with the relationship between the requirements, their sources, and the system design. Using traceability, the requirements finding becomes easy. Various types of traceabilities we have. The first we have is the requirement identification, where it goes to the requirements are individually identified. The second is the change management process, where the process plan followed when analyzing a requirement change. Third is your traceability policies, where that as the amount of the information about the requirement relationship is maintained. The case tool support, where the tool support which is required to manage the requirement change as well. That's a planning and requirement management process as well. We'll talk about the another one that what we have to talk about it, and which is in the same cases if I'm going ahead, and that is your feasibility study. We have to talk about it. So the question is, what do you mean by feasibility study, and explain various the important activities that are carried out during the feasibility study phases. This has been asked if your that is of 5 marks. So let's go ahead to discuss here. So let's go ahead. Feasibility study. In terms of feasibility study, the definition for this: a feasibility study is a study made to decide whether or not the proposed system is worthwhile. And that is the another we'll talk about the activities undertaken by the feasibility studies here. In terms of activities, if I'm talking about here, the various activities undertaken by feasibility studies are: the first, make an analysis of problem, collect all the relevant information to the product, categorize the collected information into input to the system processing and output to be produced by the system, find out the constants that can be imposed on the behavior of the system as well. Now we'll discuss the other question that what we have to discuss here, which is what is the main aim of feasibility study in software development life cycle. Explain the activities undertaken that does in a feasibility study, and explain with the help of example, and we have to go ahead with the cases as well. So first we'll talk about it the aim here. Just go ahead only. In terms of aim, the focus of or aim of feasibility study is to check if the system contributes to organizational objectives, if the system can be engineered using the current technology, if the system is within the given budget, and if the system can be integrated with other useful system as well. In terms of activities here that we have even though discussed here, as you can see. Now to talk about the case study here. In terms of case study here, that consider the online library management system. The feasibility study can be performed on the following two aspects. The first aspect we have is the current system problem. In terms of current system problem, tracing the required book is difficult. Fast report generation is not possible. Information about issues of the book, and that is we have the issues of the book is not properly maintained, requires paperwork, and information about the redundant of the book is not properly maintained, requires paperwork, and there no central database available, and everything is carried manually as well. We'll talk about the second one which we have here, and that is in the same case we have the other one is the usefulness of proposed system. Okay, let's go ahead with that. In the terms of it, the usefulness of a proposed system, that is an online library management system will reduce the workload employed, and there will be a fast retrieval of the information about the required by the user, and it will be provide the proper monitoring of the desired information. The paperwork will get reduced, and all the detail of the informations are available just on a click, and the system will provide a better and efficient services to the members as well. Now we'll talk about with the detailed about it, which is the information that is information modeling, and where the draw and complete a DFD at least up to 2 levels for the library management that we have to library management system के लिए हमें DFD बनाना है, and we have to even explain with that as well. And this has been asked for 5 marks, so let's go ahead with the detailed about us of about a DFD here. In terms of DFD, in this DFD the whole system is represented with the help of the processing and input, processing and output. And the input that can be the student request for a book, enhanced book request, and to show that the identity of the student, he or she has to submit his or her library card, hence library card. So the processing unit can be globally given here, and we'll talk about it, which is for the library information system. The system will produce the following outputs as well, and for that we have the demanded book that will be given to the students, and hence books will be the output here. So the first we have here is your student, then it will move towards library information system, then it will go further, that will give the output as well, where in the same case it will come as this as well. So let's go ahead with the DFD of this library information system here, and which we have here, it is that is student. It is a book request, and this is the library card. Okay, it will goes towards library information system, and then that is demanded book information, and then after that it will display the book, display of book. In return of the library information system, after the displaying, it will give the book to the student here. This is the level 0 DFD, context level DFD here, which we can say that level 0 DFD, which is context level DFD. In this, the demanded book will be given in the student, and hence that will be the output, and where the library information system that should display the demanded book information, which can be used by the customers while selecting the books as well. Now we'll talk about the level 1 DFD. In terms of level 1 DFD here, in this level the system is exposed with more processing detail and the processes that need to be carried out. The first we have is your delivery of book. Second is search by topic. Where in the same case these processes requires a certain information such as list of the authors, and that is list of titles, list of topics, the books themselves, that from which books that can be that is being allocated, and this kind of information is represented on the data stores as well. Now we will be going ahead with other one that what we have to talk about it in terms of it, and that is also very important towards when we are talking about it, and that is in the terms of it, if I'm talking about, there are many questions being arise here, but this is a question which they had asked you here in the examination paper, so that we had discussed here in level of 1 DFD. If I'm talking about, that gonna be to be large here, so let's go ahead with that as well. Here it is a student, it will go book request, library card, to the 1 DFD. Then after that what we'll get, bookshelves, list of authors and list of titles. Then after that display of books, book search, list of topics, this is connected to one another, and this is level 1 DFD. Now we'll go ahead with the detail about it, where we have student, that is your book request, library card, this is a book, this is same as that what we had done. For there it is your the book shelves, this another one is your the list of authors, and the other one we have is your list of titles. This all comes towards the delivery of book. And this is your the list of topics, and it will go towards the delivery of books, that it will send topics. This is also the topic. This from student, it will comes towards the search by topic. That is your book request by topic. This is book, it will assign to the student, that is based on topic. In terms of this is a demanded book, demanded book info, and this is your, that is the display of book. Then it will lead a demanded book info. give search by topic and then assign to the students here. So this is what we have is a level 1 DFD here. This is level 0 DFD, this is level 1 DFD. Now we'll talk about the another one, which is your level 2 DFD, that we have to talk about it, and that is also an important one. As I told you about, there is a student where we book request, library card to assign to the delivery of books, and that is, it will be assigned from that is that is your the book shelves, a list of authors, list of titles being assigned to the delivery of books, and it will be assigned to the demanded book info, which is to display here. And that is the book demanded info that comes to the search on topics, and that is the demand book info has been gone towards the delivery of books as well. And after that it is will be assigned, and then the book that is based on the topic will be assigned to the students here as well, where this is the list of topics, and that could be the topics being transferred to search this particular book on related to the topics here. So this is what we have as your level of level 1 DFD. Now we'll talk about the level 2 DFD as well. That is also a very important question in terms of it. So let's go ahead with the level 2, because this is an important one. As I told you, this has been asked in the examination paper, and that's the reason I had let you do it. So you can just draw it when I'm drawing it out. You can just go ahead with the diagrams as well. Let's go ahead with the level 2 DFD here. In terms of level 2 DFD, here we have student, it will go book request, it will assign book, just one, that is your the get book, it will go ahead with the book shelf here, then is 1, 2, that is your the find book positions will comes towards it, which is list of authors, that is comes under in it. It will comes here down, which is 1, 3, that is the update list of the borrowed books. This is a bidirectional of the list of borrowers, and that is the display of the books. This is the level 2 DFD, as I told you about it. So let's go ahead with the descriptions about it, where this is in a student, this is your the book request, this is when the books is returned towards it, that is get book, it is your the book shelf, and it was that the book will get book here is from there. After that, this is your the find book position, where it will go to the shelf number and book info number, shelf number, book info number, this is authors, that is list of authors, here the list of titles, and this is your titles as well, this is book title, it will go towards the update list of borrowed books, this is your the book title and student name, which is list of borrowed books, when it is demanded book, demanded book info, and it will give here that is the display of book. Now this is a level 2 DFD here, and now we'll go ahead further one, and that what we have to talk about it, because that has been the another question here, which is to explain the data flow diagram with suitable examples here. So we'll go ahead here as well. Data flow diagram. So data flow diagram, which is your DFD. So in the same case here, the DFD, that the data flow diagram depicts the information system, that information flows and the transform that are applied on the data, and as it moves from the input to output. The symbols that are used in the data flow diagram, that the data flow diagrams are used to represent the system at any level of abstraction. The DFD that can be partitioned into the levels, and data represent the increase in the information flow and the detailed functionality, where a level 0 DFD is called a fundamental system, a model, or the context model, and in the context model the entire software system is represented by the bubble with input and output indicated by incoming and outgoing arrows. Each process shows in the level 1 represent the sub-functions of overall system. The number of the levels in the DFD that can be increased until even every process that represents the basic functionality as well. Here we go ahead. Further one, that is the other question is, what is DFD, which is data flow diagram, and explain the rules for drawing that a good DFD diagram with the help of a suitable example. That has been asked of 10 marks. So yes, we'll go ahead, and rules for design, because data flow diagram we had done it. Now we'll discuss about it. That is your rules for designing, that is rules for designing DFD, and that we have in the cases here, that the first is, no process can have only outputs or only inputs. The process must have both outputs and input here. Okay, it does not mean that आप सिर्फ output ही बना रहे हो या फिर सिर्फ input ही बना रहे हो. You have to make output as well as input as well. The second rule to draw it, that the verb phrases in the problem description that can be identical process in the systems here. And the other is, there should not be a direct flow between the data, that is your external entity, and the flow should all go through the process. Data stores labels should be noun phrase from that is your that is we have a problem description, and no data should move directly between the external entities, and that flow should go through a process as well. Okay, so it not will go to the from source to direct sync, but it will go in between the external entities as well. Now we'll talk about the one other question here, and that is in the terms of it, which is your the ER diagram that has been demanded many more times in the examination paper, and as well as many more things in terms of it. So we'll just go ahead with the representation about it, which is the entity relationship diagram, and that will go ahead here. Entity relationship diagram. Entity relationship diagram here, in this the entity, this has been asked of 10 marks, so that we have to represent it out. So the entity relationship diagram is mainly used in the application, but it can also be used in the data design. The primary purpose of ER diagram is to represent the relationship between the data object. So we'll talk about the entity, relationship and attributes, and then we'll draw a sort of an ER diagram for that respect towards it. So the first we'll discuss about it, which is your entity. What is entity, or what you have to make as an entity, that we'll discussed here in the detail. In this, the entity about it, that you have to draw as a rectangle, and an entity is an object that exists and is a distinguishable, and that is similar to record in programming languages with their attributes. The second we'll talk about it, it's your relationship. In terms of relationship, where that is drawn as a diamond as associated among the several entities. Relationships may have attributes, and relationships have cardinality, for example like one to many. The third we'll talk about it, which is your that is attribute. In terms of attribute, we have to draw as an eclipse, similar to record the fields in the programming languages. Each attribute has a set of permitted values called the domain. Primary key attributes may be underlined. The typical structures of VR diagram is illustrated, that will do it here. And that begin represented in the form of, which is the first we have here. This has been entity, and we have a relationship. This is called attributes. Then we have entity, we have attributes, then we have relationship, and then we have entity, and then of course we have attributes. Okay, this is an ER diagram, which is known as your entity relationship diagram. In reference towards it, if I'm talking about, this is an entity, these were attributes, all the three are attributes. This is relationship, this is also an entity, this is attribute, this is relationship, this is entity, attribute, and of course attribute. Okay, this is an ER diagram that we have to discuss here. Now we will move ahead to the further one, and that what we have to talk about it. Now we'll go ahead with a drawing that is your ER diagram here, and on the basis that we'll discuss here. So the ER diagram, on the basis that the ER diagram which we are drawing here is your ER diagram for the bookstore, and this has been asked here in the examination paper as well, that is of 5 marks, so that will do it. ER diagram for a bookstore. So in this, we'll draw it. We have attributes as well that have been representing. Then we have a relationship, an attribute, entity, and it is will be that is having a relationship, entity. With this relationship we have two entities, attributes here. That it will be having a relationship that are connected to, and we have an entity with a one attribute. This is connected towards that is connected to it. This is also having one attribute. So this is an ER diagram for a bookstore that will go ahead here in the detail. In this that we have here is, as you can see, that is we have your bookstore, because it is all about bookstore. In a bookstore here, that is we have to know about the code, name, address, and phone. This is all about bookstore. Then we have, in a bookstore there should be the stocks, and then stocks that we know the number that is connected with books. Then we have ISBN number, ISBN. Then the other attribute we have here is your publication, the title, author. This ISBN and code is in primary key. This price as well. Then books that has been related with the purchased by. Then you have to know the date, the receipt number, that is the customer, name, address, then the email, that is your primary, and then of course the phone. This is reference towards the customer as well. In the same cases, that is we have here is your basket of, that is connected to the shopping cart. Then we have your basket ID as well, that is a primary one. This is connected to contains, that is connected to that we have as an attribute, which is your number here. So this is all what we can say. This is a AR diagram for the bookstore here, and that even though that is also an important one when you are going ahead, and that is we have to discuss as well. So in the same cases, this is important as I told you about it, and which you have to be considered about as well. So where in the same case for these particular things you have to consider about it, how it will be. So here we'll end up with this as well, so that you will get all these questions and all these important things at once. And before ending with this, just let you know one thing. As we had started with this as of software engineering, we had completed the unit 1 and we had started with the unit 2 as well. So this is all our important questions here with which we have to discuss here as well. And in the same cases, if I am talking about other than this the software engineering, we are dealing with the database management system, where we had discussed many of the that is your many of these particular ER diagrams as well. And other than that, we are dealing with the quantitative aptitude as well, where we had started with the arithmetical ability, and in that we had started with arithmetical ability, and in that we had done with the 3 topics, which is your the decimal fraction, operations on numbers, and as well as the LCM and SCF of numbers as well. And in reference towards it, we are dealing we had completed sociology as well, and we are dealing with the chemistry of class 12 that we have to discuss in the NCRT here, and which we have discussed about the class 9th as well. The NCRT we had done it. And in software engineering, in terms of it, before starting with that, we are dealing with the reasoning as well, and here we had completed the verbal reasoning, where which is general mental ability and the logic reasoning. And in the non-verbal reasoning, we had done the series, which is more than 1000 questions, and analogy as 500 questions, and decimal fractions that we had done as well, near about 500 questions. And then we had started with the 4th topic, which is simplification here. That we will be surely end up with the next coming classes as well. In terms of software engineering, that we have to discuss here, which is your introduction, that is the chapter 1, and that we had covered up, where we have to cover up the introduction to software engineering, programs and software, introduction to software engineering, software components, software characteristics, software crisis, software engineering process, similarity and differences on the conventional engineering process, software quality attributes, software that is the development life cycle models, waterfall models, prototype models, spiral models, evolutionary development models, iterative enhancement model as well. In the same programs and software product as well, software characteristics, software that we are dealing with this that is your software quality attributes as well. And we will discussing about the short answer type question as well, the comparison among all the models as well that we are dealing with. Other than that, in the software second that we have your unit, which is a software requirement specification, which is SRS, which we had started with, where we had covered up the requirements in engineering process, elicitations, analysis, documentation, review and management of their needs, feasibility study, information modeling, data flow diagram, and then entity relationship diagram that we had even though started with. Will surely complete in the next coming class. Decision tables, SRS document, IEEE standards for the SRS as well, and as well as the software quality assurance, which is SQA, where we have to discuss about the verification and validation, SQA plans, software quality framework, ISO 9000 models, and CMM model as well. In the same case, we will surely complete in the unit 2, and in the same case we are dealing with the unit 3rd as well, and which is the software design, that is your basic concepts of software design, architectural design, and that is your low level design, modularization design, and that we have your the structures, design structures, and that is your the charts, pseudo codes, and as well as the flow charts, coupling and cohesion measures and design strategies. This is function oriented design, object oriented design here, that is top down, and the bottom up design as well, that is your software measurements and the matrices and the various sizes oriented measures, as well as the Halstead software is sciences and the functions points, and that is based on the measures on the cyclometric complexity measures and the controls flow diagrams as well. That what we have to cover up here. Other than that, we have to cover up, that is unit 4. In unit 4, we have to talk about software testing, which is testing objectives, unit testing, integration testing, acceptance testing, regression testing, testing for the functionality, and testing for the performance as well. Top down, bottom up testing strategies, test drivers and test stops, as well as structural testing, white box testing, functional testing, black box testing, test data suite preparations, alpha and beta testing, and products static that testing strategies, formal technical reviews, peers review, walk through code inspections, compliances with the design and the coding standards as well. We'll talk about the unit which is 5th we have to discuss here, which is the software maintenance and software project management, where we have to cover up the software as an evolutionary entity, need for maintenance, categories or maintenance, preventives, correctives, and that is your perfective maintenance, cost of maintenance, software that is re-engineering, reverse engineering, software configuration management attributes, activities, change control process, software version control, and overview of the case tools, estimations of the various parameters such as the cost, efforts, schedule, duration, constituents of the cost here, that is the cost model, which is COCOMO, resource allocation model, software risk analysis and management, that what we have to cover up here. So first of all, it's a huge request from my side to all the viewers, please go through with the subscribe button, and please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, so that many and maximum people can get the information at once, and even though you can also enjoy the video as well. So thank you, stay tuned with us, and thanks to all those subscribers, those who have subscribed to our channel. It's a huge request from my side to please go through with the subscribe button, and please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, so that many and maximum people can get the information at once, and even though you can also enjoy the video as well, and we will surely provide you all the requirements what you had mentioned in on the comment section, but your support is very important to us. Thank you.